Fellas, now unless you've been living under a rock, there's been a massive debate over the internet over 100 human beings and if they could beat a single gorilla, which by the way, yes they could. But out my own UFC twist on this, how much of each UFC champion would it take to beat a single gorilla? And I'm going to be taking account size and style compared to obviously the size of each UFC champion and also how they fight, their fighting style. And we'll start off with Alejandro Pantoja in the flyweight division, 125 pounds. I'd say Pantoja's style is just scrappy. He likes to get in your face all the time, making it dirty, making it scrappy, cutting people open, likes to mix it to the ground. He's just a very overwhelming, in-your-face fighter, and he gets it done all the time. If I had to compare him to an animal, kind of like a honey badger or like a chihuahua with rabies or something, and I think it works. Imagine you're like a Leon Edwards trying to outpoint a gorilla. That ain't going to work, so I think the potential threats from Pantoja against a gorilla is he could overwhelm the gorilla, obviously not single-handedly, but he's a very overwhelming fighter, is Pantoja to fight, I imagine. You're always in your face from round 1 to round 5, and you get like 100 Pantojas or, even just over 50 Pantojas. That's going to be overwhelming for a gorilla, about 20 Pantojas running at you, charging at you with his little combinations of punches in bunches. So I think he could overwhelm the gorilla, and on top of that, he could rough up the gorilla with elbows. He's a very kind of slashy fighter, is Pantoja. Likes roughing people up. I remember that fight with Moreno a few years ago, the fight with Royval. He likes to do a lot of damage to Pantoja as much as possible, so that could be another massive advantage over a gorilla. And just imagine 10 Pantojas on each limb. It will get to the point where even though he's only 125 pounds on weigh-in day, the sheer amount of Pantojas on each limb and the weight of Pantoja would be enough to kind of make the gorilla immobile. So the amount of Pantojas would definitely pose a threat, but you've got to take into account that he's 125 pounds. He is smaller and weighs less than the average human being, and even compared to a gorilla, he's very small, this Pantoja, and I don't know how much technique would come into play when you're facing a fucking silverback gorilla. So I'm going to say when it comes to Pantoja against a gorilla, it would take at least 75 Pantojas to beat a gorilla. I think that's a fair amount. 75 Pantojas if they have the right game plan. They're not going to stand there and try and make it a technical fight like a Leon Edwards. They're going to be charging at him. Pantoja's style. Within a couple of seconds, even though there'll be about 10, 20 of them gone within a second, I reckon it'll get to the point where enough Pantojas can kind of overwhelm the gorilla, take it out, and over time, beat the gorilla. If I had to formulate a game plan for the team of Pantojas, I'd say the game plan for Pantoja would probably be simply to just charge the gorilla all at the same time, take the back of the gorilla, flatten it out, and just rough it up with elbows, ground and pound. That would be the game plan for Pantoja. But what about Merab, 135 pounds to bantamweight champion? Merab's game plan is very simple. Constant takedowns, pressure takedowns, constant taking you down. When you get back up, he'll shoot another takedown, take you down for a couple of seconds, let you back up, and then to shoot another takedown. From round 1 to round 5, he will absolutely exhaust you from the sheer volume of takedowns that he throws. Kind of like a Komodo dragon or like a python of something, where he's just constantly smothering you with takedowns. Again though, suffers from the issue that he is significantly smaller, maybe not significantly, but definitely smaller than the average man and 100% smaller than a gorilla. So I think the potential threats from Merab to a gorilla could be the fact that he will not get tired. Human beings are known for their good stamina compared to the rest of animals and, other animals in the animal kingdom. Merab's known for having good stamina amongst human beings. He ain't going to get tired. Even if the gorilla starts getting worn out from the sheer amount of from Merab's, that ain't going to be an issue. Stamina is off the table. Merab's going to be just as high paced as he is at the beginning of the fight until whether it goes on. The stamina is never going to be an issue for Merab, and he will smother the gorilla. His style is so smothering in the octagon. I remember that fight with Peter Yan, where he was just straight torturing Peter Yan. You get about, nearly like 100 Merabs, 100% is going to smother the gorilla, but I don't even think you need 100 Merabs. I think 55 will do the job. You get a Merab, about 20 Merabs on each leg, or at least 10 Merabs on each limb, taking down the gorilla, smothering the gorilla. I think that's going to be enough to take down a single silverback gorilla. So the game plan that I will formulate for Merab would be every single Merab in the fight, all 55 of them, on a single leg. Don't bother striking, don't bother doing anything else. Each Merab splits up and takes shoots a single leg until the gorilla's taken down. Then you keep it down until exhaustion. I don't see Merab finishing the gorilla. He's not really known for his ground and pound or submission ability, so I think it'd just be until exhaustion. The amount of volume of Merabs and the weight of the Merabs over time would be enough to exhaust the gorilla, and obviously Merab's got insane stamina, so he ain't going to get exhausted himself. And then Alexander Volkanovski, we're turning it up a little bit, 145 pounds. Volkanovski's style is kind of just break people down on the feet. He has got wrestling ability, he showed that in the fight with Makhachev, but it's to break people down on the feet round after round, slowly pick people apart until either he beats them by decision or they can just not go any further, and the fight gets stopped. Kind of like a kangaroo constantly striking in your face, like a black mamba, just constantly, taking digs at you, getting you done. Again, shorter compared to the average human being, but we're definitely getting up there in size, and this is what Volkanovski would look like compared to a gorilla. So the potential threats that Volkanovski can pose to a gorilla is the fight IQ. He has some of the best fight IQ out of every UFC champion. It's why he's managed to become one of the greatest of all time. Volkanovski's fight IQ is on the next level. Very, very smart fighter, makes a bunch of smart decisions, and I think that would work against a gorilla. They might use a couple Volkanovskis as bait. I don't know what they do, but I can see Volkanovski having good IQ. He's not going to do a dumb game plan against a gorilla. He's not going to stand there and make it a point fight. He's going to find a way to win. And I think another threat to Volkanovski is that he could slowly break down a gorilla. That's his style in Octagon. Slowly break people down with his striking until they can pretty much go no further. So that'll definitely be a big threat to a gorilla. So I think when it comes to Volkanovski, it'd take around 47 Alexander Volkanovskis to beat a gorilla, or less in my opinion. You know, I think about 50 to 60 average humans could do it. So I think 47 or less could definitely be the game plan for Volkanovski. But he isn't really a smother wrestler, which is kind of the style that you want against a gorilla like a Merab. Anyway, the game plan for Volkanovski that I would formulate is use a few Volkanovskis as bait. We're going to have to say bye to a few Volkanovskis. Do 5 to 10 Volkanovskis as bait to use the fight IQ. Get the gorillas to attack those Volkanovskis. And then the rest of the Volkanovskis sneak up, shoot takedowns, while the other ones piece them up on the feet. So then the gorilla's stuck between trying to defend the takedowns and also defend the strikes from Volkanovski. It's going to get overwhelmed. It's going to get finished by Alexander Volkanovski. And then the pound for pound #1 fighter in the world, Islam Makhachev, at 155 pounds. He has a very grappling heavy style, and he's one of the best grapplers in the UFC. Elite wrestling, elite submission ability. He wants to take you down and eventually find that submission, but he's also got poppity shots on the feet. Hits pretty hard at the feet, as he, shot against that fight with Volkanovski. Has actually some pretty solid striking, and he comes from a lineage, him and Khabib, when they used to wrestle bears as kids down in Dagestan. He's kind of like a python, slowly squeezing you out over time, or some sort of snake where he's just slowly taking you down, squeezing you until you toss. And I'd say Makhachev's probably the same height, but maybe a bit bigger than the average man, and obviously still significantly smaller compared to a gorilla. So the potential threats from Islam Makhachev is that he's very, very strong for his size. I think a couple Makhachevs could match the gorilla strength. I'm talking in the 20 and the 30s, but he's got such amount of strength for just 155 as Islam Makhachev. So he's got that strength advantage, and you get a couple of you get a few Makhachevs on a gorilla. I think the strength is definitely going to pay a part to Makhachev and taking the gorilla down. So I also think the second advantage, or a threat that it could pose to a gorilla, is the fact that he's a great, dangerous grappler. He's probably the most dangerous submission artist right now in the UFC, or at least the best grappler right now in the UFC from what he's done. So I think you get a shit ton of Makhachevs, all of them trying to take down a single gorilla. You tell me at one point he's not able to take down a gorilla. So I think when it comes to Islam Makhachev against a gorilla, it will probably take about 36 Islam Makhachevs to beat a single gorilla. I think it'd only take about 36. The game plan for Islam Makhachev is pretty simple. Every single Makhachev uses everything to take down the gorilla. We know how good Makhachev's ground game is. You have 36 of those men trying to take down a single gorilla at full, trying to full 100% effort. There's no way that gorilla's staying on its feet. And then once he's been taken down, 50% of the Makhachevs hold it down, 25% look for a submission, and then the other 25% look for ground and pound. There's a threat coming from everywhere from all the Makhachevs. The gorilla's got no chance. 36 Makhachevs would do the job at wiping out a gorilla. But what about Belal Muhammad at 170 pounds? Belal Muhammad's game plan similar to Merab's. He wants to slowly break you with his wrestling. He wants to tire you out, exhaust you, give you no chance of even just breathing, constantly smothering you all the time with his takedowns, picking you up, slamming you, taking you down, while you can do absolutely nothing about it. Kind of like a panda, or maybe like a koala. Maybe not as dangerous as like an Islam Makhachev, but definitely a great wrestler. And I'd say he's probably a slight, kind of like the average human being is Belal Muhammad when it comes to size. And I guess this is kind of the whole debate over, the average human being against a gorilla. So the potential threats that Belal could pose to a gorilla is that he could quickly overwhelm a gorilla. We know how quickly Belal Muhammad overwhelms fighters. I mean, in that fight with Leon Edwards, it was, 10 seconds where he took down Leon Edwards and started to break him down. Belal Muhammad's not going to give that gorilla a chance to breathe. You have a shit ton of Belal Muhammad's in there. It could quickly overwhelm a gorilla, just like he overwhelms people in Octagon. I think another potential threat is he's a very strong wrestler. He's definitely one of the best wrestlers in the UFC right now, one of the best wrestling heavy champions we've got, and it's very rare that you see Belal Muhammad in a fight where he's not out wrestling his opponent. So I think when it comes to Belal Muhammad against a gorilla, it would probably only take about 33 Belal Muhammad's, in my opinion, to beat a gorilla. And that might be quite a short number, but I think it would only probably take about 33. The game plan that Belal Muhammad would have to use against a gorilla would be to fight each other until the gorilla falls asleep. I think this would be the best technique. You get all the Belal Muhammad's lined up in a Belal Muhammad versus Belal Muhammad contest. Eventually, the gorilla's going to be bored, it's going to fall asleep, and then once the gorilla's asleep, you've got your best chance. All the Belal Muhammad's pounce on the sleeping gorilla, keep it down, and similar to Merab, exhaust the gorilla until it's no more, and you've won the fight. And then for Dricus du Plessis, one of the goofier fighters, kind of fights like a gorilla, at 185 pounds. It's kind of hard to describe the style of Dricus du Plessis. If I had to sum it up, it's kind of just look terrible in the octagon, but just somehow find a way to win. He's always got this goofy style where you never think it's going to go well, but then you look at his record, he's undefeated in the UFC and he's the defending champion in the middleweight division. Definitely bigger than the average human being, which is obviously going to start posing a threat when it comes to gorillas, when the whole debate is about an average human being against a gorilla. So the potential threats from Dricus du Plessis, I mean, I think there's one that stands out more than any, and it's plot armor. Dricus du Plessis doesn't really tend to look good in any of his fights, and he always finds a way to win. The one fight where you think Dricus du Plessis done, he's hyper slowed down, he was never that good, and then a couple of minutes later he's getting his hand raised, and he's managed to find a way to win. So I think you can put a Dricus du Plessis against a gorilla. Yes, I'm expecting Dricus du Plessis to get nearly finished early on in that fight against a gorilla, but I think he's going to come back and get the win of a gorilla regardless. So I think due to plot armor itself, with the way things has been going with Dricus du Plessis' career, you only need about one Dricus du Plessis to beat a gorilla. I think you need about one. The game plan's simple. Just fate will let you win. You don't need, 30, 40 Dricus du Plessis. He always finds a way to win from plot armor against opponents that he shouldn't be beating. So, Dricus du Plessis versus gorilla, I'm confident that if you made that fight happen, at some point in the fight, whether it's by decision, finish, however it may be, DQ even, Dricus du Plessis would find a way to win because of fate. And now we're getting big. Magomed Ankalaev at 205 pounds. Magomed Ankalaev, he has got wrestling. I don't like it when people say that he's, not a wrestler at all. He definitely has got some sort of wrestling, but he's mainly, his game plan mainly takes place on the feet. He's got pretty solid kickboxing for the light heavyweight division. Likes to kind of threat the takedown, but make his fight predominantly take place on the feet. Kind of like a black bear in the sense. Got the wrestling, likes to strike, and he's definitely significantly bigger than the average human being, but obviously this is going to start posing a threat to a gorilla. So I think the potential threats to Magomed Ankalaev against a gorilla is that he's much bigger than the average human being. This is where size definitely starts to take a toll. Magomed Ankalaev's a big dude. I mean, it's without saying, every light heavyweight on the roster pretty much is a big dude. Stands out, and the whole debate about an average dude versus a gorilla, bro, Magomed Ankalaev's got the skills of about 3 average dudes as well. So I think the second potential threat for Magomed Ankalaev is he's great everywhere the fight goes. If he wants to wrestle, he can wrestle, and this is going to pose a threat to the gorilla. The gorilla's going to have to be worrying about takedowns. Is the amount of Ankalaev's going to try and take him down. He's going to have to worry about the striking of Magomed Ankalaev. There's many different areas where you've got to worry about. So I think when it comes to Ankalaev against a gorilla, it would only take about 28 Magomed Ankalaevs to beat the gorilla, for the fact that he's so well rounded. He's very strong for the division, and he's a huge unit as well. 28 Magomed Ankalaevs I think will be enough to wipe out a gorilla. The game plan for Magomed Ankalaev: half of the Ankalaevs hold the gorilla immobile. Ankalaev likes holding people against a cage, and against Alex, he's done it before. So half of them hold the gorilla immobile, and then the other half just ground and pound it until he gets a TKO finish. I think that'll probably be the best case scenario for Magomed Ankalaev. Hold it immobile, get the finish for your ground and pound, and the fact that the power is starting to increase with the weight classes going up would make it much easier. And then we've got the final boss, 265 pounds, the unit of the UFC, Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall's just an explosive, quick and dangerous heavyweight. He can knock you out on the feet. He's got some of the most vicious KO ability out of the heavyweights, but he's also got an underrated grappling base. He comes from a grappling background. He can wrestle. He's got really good submission ability, and he's more than significantly bigger than the average human being, which is where it really starts taking a toll against a gorilla when you've got a size advantage as big as Tom Aspinall compared to the average human being. So the potential threat is that he is an athletic giant. He's huge. He's a monster amongst men, but he's not just huge, he's also got that athleticism. He's the most athletic heavyweight on the roster right now, whilst also being, 250 pounds, however much he weighs in. So he's a huge athletic monster, is Tom Aspinall. Not just one of these fat heavyweights who kind of rely on their KO power, which has nothing against a gorilla. And the second potential threat is that multiple Aspinalls would overwhelm a gorilla. You're telling me that multiple Tom Aspinalls, I mean, look how good one Tom Aspinall is. You're saying multiple of those men against a gorilla would not be enough to overwhelm it. Like, imagine you've got a couple Aspinalls on the back, a couple Aspinalls, just charging, swinging at the gorilla. A couple of Aspinalls shooting takedowns. The gorilla's going to get overwhelmed. He's going to be thinking, what the fuck am I dealing with here? This isn't an average human being. This is a 265-pound heavyweight champion. So I think it'd only take about 23 Tom Aspinalls to beat a gorilla. I do understand how dangerous a gorilla is and how powerful a gorilla is, so I'm not going to say anything less than 20, but I think about 23 prime Tom Aspinalls would be enough to take out a gorilla, never mind 100. So I think the game plan for Tom Aspinall is pretty much just do whatever you want. Bum rush the gorilla, charge at it, strike, grapple, whatever you want to do, because eventually the size of you being 265 pounds, the skill at your height and weight, and the technique would take over. I think 23 Tom Aspinalls would beat a gorilla, but that is how I would favour each UFC champion, in the amount of each UFC champion it would take to beat a single gorilla, considering the debate that's going on. So let me know your thoughts. If you agree, disagree. Thank you for watching.